a pair programming session with me and Evan, where we work on the decentralized open source social media platform that is mainly aiming towards, deproductizing humanity, allowing people to take control over their data and respect their privacy, and give them kind of control over who can and cannot see their data and who can and cannot connect with them in their own little communities. Today, Evan and I are going to be. I'm joined today with Evan. He's a very smart software engineer. He's going to be helping me today, showing the world how to conduct a pair programming session to write high quality code. Pure code where it's very systematic, very intentional. When it comes to having two engineers writing the code at the same time. Just to give everyone here a high level perspective. The way we're going to build this system, we want to build an endpoint. Our objective today is to build a simple endpoint that allows us to retrieve all the posts from our database, right? Of course, we're going to add some OData queries on top of that down the road, but for the purpose of this demo, we're just gonna want to allow, our consumers, which would be the UI that we build as well, to connect with a controller, reach out to a foundation service and hit a storage broker, and that storage broker will basically retrieve the data we need from a storage entity, a SQL server, or whatever we decide this to be. In our case here, it's going to be a SQL server. Okay. So this is my storage here. This is my storage broker services. And then on the other side of the aisle, there's a consumer. So we're going to use Postman today to basically consume these endpoints, and display the capabilities that we're trying to build. So I'm gonna start real simple here. I'm gonna pass the ball back and forth between me and Evan. What do we really need to do to implement something like this? It's really simple. Let's put some tasks, into perspective. So what are the tasks that would get us to actually get the job done? First of all, we want model and migrations. Model and migrations. Basically, we want to create that post model that we talked about earlier in this series. And that model will basically be the entity that we are actually manipulating and working with. So we can read the data through that model, save the data through that model, and all that. The migration is very specific to the entity framework and the database migration, which is basically using an object relational model or object entity model framework that basically allows us to turn our C# model into a database table. This is the magic that the entity framework does, to help engineers who don't have to have any SQL experience, don't have to have any idea how storage and SQL databases work. They just want to communicate, their migration and communicate their changes through directly through the database. So this is one task, model and migration, and then we need a broker, a storage broker method that says select all posts. So we need a storage broker that will help us, select all the posts. And then on top of that, we need a foundation service that would retrieve all posts. So that's the service. So that's the third task that we have. And then the last task we need a controller method. And this controller method will help us basically get all posts. So you see how the language here is changing from a storage broker that uses select to a foundation service that says retrieve into an HTTP, post controller, that get controller that actually speaks the HTTP verb language. So how are we going to break this today? I'm going to start with this one. I'm going to be the blue. Evan is going to be the red in here. And so I'm going to start with the blue model and migration. Evan is going to implement select all posts, and then both of us are going to be working on this one. So both of us are going to be working on this piece because we're going to be pair programming, writing a test, making it pass, and then writing a test, and and back and forth. And then this last one, whoever is the last person, to write the last task, then the next person would be the person to pick this up. And we don't know who's that going to be yet. So Evan, are you ready? Are you ready to start this? I'm going to start with the model and migration. And let's get started. All right. So here we go. So here's what I'm going to do. First of all, just so people understand, how we are going to do this is that we're going to create a branch, and then we're going to be both contributing to that branch. The branch will be living in Ta'arafu, core, which is basically you can find the source code available. This is an open source project starting to have a lot of traction, a lot of people starting to look at it. And all the videos that I record for Taarafo will be living right here, and they're published on my YouTube channel as well, along with some introductions to the actual philosophy behind building a deproductization to humanity machine that actually helps people gain back their dignity and gain back their privacy and gain back their rights as individuals who want to use the technology without having to be violated. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and create a little branch here. And our branch, the beautiful thing about, pair programming is that our branch, the branch that we're gonna create today, is gonna be very reflective of how we came into building a system in that particular matter. So I'm just gonna go here and say users Hassan Habib, and then I'm gonna say, let's start with this one, brokers, right? And then posts, and then migrations. Model and migration. So every branch, every task may as well have its own branch and may as well have its own pull requests to be merged. Since I am the owner of the repo, usually you need two other engineers to take a look at it. But since this is for the purpose of the demo, a demo purpose, we're just going to be merging these branches as soon as they are done. So I'm going to start with this brokers posts migrations. I'm going to create that branch. And then I'm going to show you here two things that are really, really important. I'm going to show you how to write an actual migration. And I'm going to show you how to verify that your migration is working as it's expected. Two things I want you to keep an eye on, right? Your solution in here on the right side is your solution. And on the left here, I'm going to display something called SQL Object Explorer. Yes, Visual Studio can actually allow you to visualize SQL databases and actually write queries as well. So today I don't have this SQL database that I'm looking for. How do I know which database I'm supposed to be writing to? In your connection string in here, you basically choose whatever name you want. So I chose DB, right? Some people might say, well, where do I get that connection string from? How did you get that connection string? How do you type that? It's really simple. One easy way you can do this, there's many, many ways to do this, but if you're adding a new file into your solution, right click, add a new item, you can go up in here and type in app settings or just settings. This is the beautiful thing about this template. If you go to app settings file and you say app settings dot development dot JSON, it will create one demo connection string for you with a capital letters, capitalized sentence here that says change me. Find a different name for this so you can provision your database. So the first thing we want to do, we want to put a good connection string so we can actually connect to any database on our local server. This is MSSQL local DB, and local DB, this is something that comes outside of the box. Usually when you install Visual Studio, you're going to get this outside of the box for free. For another purpose of this demo, if you see this funny logo at the top here, that's because I'm using the preview version of Visual Studio 2022. Highly recommend you go and check it out. It's really, really cool. Okay, so Taarafu Core DB. We're just gonna call it something different so people would know, it doesn't exist, something that doesn't exist that I haven't already provisioned. So this is number one. I created a branch. I have this connection string right here. Let me go ahead and start creating the model. So the first thing that you want to create is a model. And Evan is going to help me out here with the contents of this model. So there's models and then posts in here. And then under posts, I'm going to create this model that's called post right there. So this post, and then there is post. The post is a social media post. Someone just posting a record on social media. Control period will will remove unnecessary and add a header. This is a copyright coalition of good-hearted engineers, open source engineers that are helping around the world. They don't get paid. They don't care about, even getting a thank you. And they're building software, really good engineers, just like Evan, trying to help the world, make the world a better place, one line of code at a time. And this is free to use to connect the world. It's not authorized, for anything. We're just doing it to connect the world. As you may have noticed, Visual Studio 2020 is already assuming things. Look, it's saying, hey, do you want to create an ID for this? It's really, really smart. It sometimes too smart, right? So Evan, why don't you tell me what kind of attributes we want to have here? Let's build some attributes. If I say prop, what do I need to put in here? I think I think, what do you think?
First, I think we need a GUID for an
GUID.
ID.
A GUID. So let's put an ID as a GUID. So this is the GUID. I'm gonna make this as an ID. Someone asked me a while back, I was working with them, they said to me, why don't you choose, look how smart it is. It says, hey, do you want title? Do you want, all the little things that it can come up with? But anyway, why the ID is good. Sometimes some people use integer as an ID, right? And they say integer is easy to index in the database. It's easy to, sift through and search through things and makes the search much easier. But the problem with the ID is that it's kind of a security exposure because people can so easily using your ID guess and think, what other resources that may exist on your database, some other posts that other people may have on your system, and they may reach to these posts without permission just by, trying different post IDs and whatnot if they can break through your security layer. So this is an added guarantee that nobody can just guess a GUID or the next GUID because it's randomized, right? It may have some date time aspect in it, but it's randomized. And because it's randomized, it's a lot more secure and a lot better than using an int. It's just my preference. What else, Evan? What should we have in a post as well? Go ahead.
The next thing probably would be a string just to have like your content in there, just to
Just
write.
the content. Okay. So this is whatever we're writing in there. Perfect. What else can we do there? Maybe time. We need a time on the post, right? So maybe a post can be, created date, and maybe there's updated date. And we use date time offset so we can have that little geolocation kind of time zone kind of thing into the system. So this is updated date. Is there anything else we need to have in the post?
An author would probably be good.
Okay, an author. So because we don't really have an author entity yet, we're just going to keep it at a GUID as a reference. But later on, we're going to have this little author thing going on. By the way, for the people that might be annoyed with this created by, updated by, and see how smart it is. It's guessing based on previous code that I've written, and major code said, hey, do you want also created by and all that? But the one thing about the beauty of this is that you may turn it off. If you don't want it, you can turn that feature off if it's super annoying. So, okay, so this is the post, right? Let's go ahead and all I'm going to do is just generate a migration. And in order for me to generate a migration, I need a couple of things. I'm just going to create an empty interface for post. I'm not going to write anything in that interface. I'm just going to say I storage broker dot posts.cs. So that's one. Nothing in here. It's going to be partialized like this one. So this is public partial interface. Right, let me clean up this area here. I don't need all these usings. I need to add the copyright, all good and dandy in here. And then I need another one on the other side, a partial class that will basically have that DB set for my posts. So I'm just gonna go ahead in here and say storage broker dot posts dot cs is another partial class. Here you go. And the setup of all of this is already in place, and I've already talked about this in another session. Is that right, Evan? I think there are other videos where I'm talking about building the storage broker just to connect to the database. I think I did talk about that in another session. So this session will only be for just the post. So I'm just going to type db set, which is something that comes out of the box with the entity framework. And this db set will be for the type post in here. And this is post. This is how the entity framework will know based on this DB set that you want to create a database table. Well, a database if it doesn't exist, and then also a database table that will go in and basically use these properties to create a database table. This is where my task ends. This is where my task ends. So I'm just gonna show the SQL Server in here on the right side, and I'm gonna show you here that I don't have Taarafu. See, PQRSTU. There's no Taarafu database in here. I don't have it going on in here. There's change me. God knows I don't know what I put in there, but I definitely don't have Taarafu core DB in here. So let's just go ahead and run the migration. So how do you run a migration really? If you go into tools and then you go into SQL, not SQL, NuGet Package Manager, and then the console in here, all you have to go and do is so you can generate code that can actually execute on the database and create a C# code that can actually execute on the database. I'm going to go like this and say add and then do a tap and it should give me a bunch of options. So I'm going to say add migration. And in here, I'm going to say, add post model. Okay, so this is post model, and I'm going to hit enter. It's going to try to build the entire solution. And after building the entire solution, it's going to generate a file in a folder called migrations. You'll see a migration folder showing up in here. There it is. And here is my C# code that's generated. If you look at the C# code that's generated, the C# code that's generated has two interesting pieces of information. The first piece is up, meaning that I want to create this database. The second piece is down, where I have decided that this migration that I have created is bad and I need to revert it. So reverting this change will be something as simple as taking down the posts database table. Okay. Now this file here is modifiable, but I normally don't touch it because the code is fine. But if you really have to modify it, that's up to you. I'm going to go ahead and add a copyright piece in here. I'm going to go back and zoom in just for people on their phones to see this. And then the last thing I want to do, I want to make sure that my database actually can get provisioned. What you can do is that you can go here and say update database. Because I have auto migration enabled, it will just create the database for me as soon as I run. So it says no migration were applied because I already executed auto migration. Auto migration can be enabled from the constructor. So in the constructor area here, you can see database migrate. Now our hypothesis is if I refresh this folder and I scroll down, I should see Tarafu core. Yes, it is. There it is, Tarafu core. And inside Tarafu core, if I expand tables, I should see posts. Yes, I do. And this is my migration history. So the Entity Framework doesn't execute the same migration twice. There's a lot to say about Entity Framework and how it works. But from a high level perspective, all I needed to do is just create a database table that I can connect my code to that has exactly identical attributes and fields that match, what is in the database. Okay, so this means my task is done. So that means I can go ahead and post this. I can go up in here and say brokers, right? And then post model and migrations, just like this. All right. And once I do that piece, I can now commit and push that code into a branch, and that branch will be merged in and so on and so forth. So that's just the first piece of our system here today. This is what I'm doing. Because we already have existing work that's already in place, we're going to start it over just for the purpose of people learning with us about this system and all that. So I'm just going to go ahead in here and say, here's my new pull request. And this pull request will have the exact same name as the commit. So I'm just going to go ahead in here and say brokers, posts, model, and migrations. Right? So I create that pull request here on GitHub. And we're going to review the pull request real quick. Always doesn't hurt. So we basically remove the existing stuff that were there because we want to show you guys how to build these things end to end. Everything here is removed. And then on the other side, we should be able to see some things are still there. So this is the post area. Okay, great. I'm going to go ahead and merge this. I think this PR is good. I'm going to go ahead and merge this PR. And then I'm going to switch over to Evan to create his own branch and tell us about creating a select all function on the storage broker. Go ahead, Evan, your turn.
Okay. I guess I should share my screen.
All right.
Okay. So first I need to pull from the or
From
update
master. Yeah,
yeah.
you want to get from master. So Evan here has two things. Evan, if you do get remote dash V, do get remote dash V, it'll show you what he has here. He has two things. He has origin and upstream. Origin is the clone of the master branch from Tarafu branch on his GitHub account. Upstream is the branch, is the main Tarafu that's under my repository where he gets to create pull requests against my repository where Tarafu is mainly being developed. So he's setting things up. Now he's going to go ahead and tell us what he's going to do next. Go ahead. Go ahead, Deb.
Okay. It seems like there is a merge conflict, but
Mhm.
it's kind of weird. But I think I can just do
Mhm.
git checkout, and I'm gonna create a new branch.
Okay.
So then brokers posts, and
Select
now
all.
wait, what all?
Would that be select all? Yeah. Yeah. So that's what you're implementing. You're implementing. So it's the type of the component that you're building, which is brokers or foundations or orchestrations, whatever, and then the entity, and then the kind of functionality that you're working with. All right. Here we go. Looks like you have a new branch. You have some changes in there. You probably want to revert those. If you look at that little pencil at the bottom, yeah, you could just say start fresh, start from scratch, revert everything. So I would do right click on the folder and just say delete or revert. I'm giving you that option.
I don't
Uh,
think so.
let's try this one. Go back to your console and just type this git reset hard dash dash hard. Nope, nope. Reset dash dash hard. Yep. I usually put a space between reset and the dash dash, but hopefully that's not what's holding it up a little bit. Yeah, put a space between the dash dash and hard and reset. Yep, there you go. Let's try this one. There you go. Okay, and do get let's reset it to master actually. So if you do get pull upstream master, I think that would do the trick for you. Okay, so you have that merge conflict, right? If you jump back to Visual Studio and say reload projects, I think that'll do the trick for you. So what do you have in your, if you minimize this guy? Yeah. So these staged changes, this is the one that I just added, these little stage changes. So the one that says both modified, right click on that tarafu.core.cs proj. Yep. And then say merge. Actually, right click on that file again and just say take remote, take incoming. Yep. Perfect. And now you are just merging with master. So the rest of these changes are my changes really. So just say commit change, changes or commit staged. Yep. You can name this merge with master or something. Perfect. There you go. Now we're in a clean state. Okay, let's close all of this and let's build a select all. So what Evan is going to be doing here is that he's going to go ahead and accept merge result. Yes. Okay. What happened here? Let's see. Um, can you revert also the core.unit test? So go to get changes. Yeah, let's see what this guy's saying. Yeah, if you double click on core, what's the change here? It's just the models, the post. Yeah, just do merge with master again, or just do amend so you can hook it up to the previous. Yep, and just say commit changes staged. Yep, perfect. Okay, now for your unit test, just remove these other files that you added for the testing because we're gonna do those together anyway. Yep, just delete that posts piece completely. The whole folder, the services, the entire services folder, if you want. All right, perfect. Now we're starting from scratch, from nothing. There it is. Right click, build everything, make sure reload core. So tarafo.core, you want to reload that guy, and let's see if we can reload project. Perfect. Let's rebuild everything and let's make sure things are working. Yeah, it looks like you still have things from the from the previous one. Looks like.
Mhm.
Why don't you branch off of upstream instead of branching off of your local? Like
Okay.
branching off of. Mhm.
And
Let's
create.
uh let's delete this branch and start over. So if you flip back to master and force merge from master into your from upstream into your origin, and then from there you can create a new branch. So let's delete that branch that you just created first. Does the tab help you autocomplete? Maybe. Yeah, there you go. Nice. Okay, we deleted the branch. Now let's do get reset hard on this one. And then let's here's an idea. Say get log dash 5 or something. Let's go to the earliest commit that you have here. So this is add post model. Keep going. Okay, enter, click enter. Yep, keep going. Okay, so all the way down to this guy, right? Do get reset do get log dash 7. Keep going, keep going, keep going. There. So this one here is before you've done this little change you have. So do get reset dash dash hard and copy that hash that you have, the commit hash that you have in there. The last commit. Yeah, copy that guy. Yep. Sometimes you don't need the whole of it, but I think this is good enough. Let's go. Perfect. Now let's go and pull latest from upstream. Mm, perfect. Now we should be in a good state. Let's see what Visual Studio has. You have everything in good shape. Perfect. What are these commits that you have at the bottom? Let's do view outgoing incoming. I think this is just you syncing your local branch, your master branch. Yep, there it is. Perfect. Now just push these. Just do commit push. Yep, that little button that you have, the 12, the one that says 12. No, if you go all the way, yeah, that's fine too. Do push in there. Yeah. Yeah, do you see that arrow at the bottom, number 12? Yeah, there it is. It's cleaned up. Okay, now let's go ahead and create that select all post that we wanted to do. Let's create a new branch. Let's call it brokers dash post dash select all. Let's go ahead and you explain to people what needs to happen there. All right. All right, let's go for it. So what are you gonna do now, Evan? What is this select all stuff that you're doing?
So now I'm gonna make a select all method for the service
Mhm.
of hosts.
I mean,
Um,
you mean on the broker first, so we can actually call the broker
yeah,
first?
on the
Yeah.
broker first, and
Yep.
then later it'll the service will call on the broker.
Awesome.
Let's go here. So
Let's start with the interface first. Always start with the contract. Contract is the most important piece. Yep, let's start from here.
but this will be an iQueryable.
That's right.
Posts.
That's right.
And then it will return this dot.
Well, we're just writing the contract, right? So let's keep the interface
Yeah,
just okay. And I don't think you need public on the interface. It's by default an interface with no implemented functionality by default wants to be public, right? So I think adding public there. I had this discussion the other day with a couple of engineers, and they said, should we add public? And I said, why would you write code that's not going to be useful? That's not going to be in use to you. Okay, so there's this guy. Now we need to implement this little interface contract, right? We said we're supposed to implement a contract. Let's go ahead and implement that guy.
Okay. So we need to implement storage broker. And then need to do the method in the interface. So
yeah, that's right. And now you want this one to be public because that's the one we want to actually access. Yep, go ahead.
this will return start
Posts, right? And this post is literally what's in your database, basically, right? So that's everything that's in your database, which is what we defined, like this DB set. That's basically what we've defined already in the database. All right, cool. If this is a one-liner, let's just give it a fat arrow instead of building an entire. Since C# is going this functional route, why don't we just go ahead and kind of fat arrow that guy? Okay. All right. Looks like we have an implementation here. Let's go for it.
And so I will commit saying broker.
Select all posts. Yeah, because the commits are mainly like for us, for people to read, especially if they're gonna be your PR. So let's separate them. So select space, all space posts. Yeah. Perfect. Let's go. So now you have a branch, and now you're gonna create a pull request against my main branch. How are you gonna do that?
So I'm actually gonna go to GitHub and new pull requests on the Terraform.core project.
Awesome. Awesome.
So I'm gonna compare it with across forks.
Okay.
Because one thing I think I forgot to do is to push it to
The actual branch, because the branch is not there yet.
Yeah, so push origin, then it'll be this branch right here.
And I think, just a little trick. I think git push origin or git push would do the trick for you as well. We'll try it next time. Yeah. All right, we should have a branch in here. I think you probably, do you need to refresh the screen or something?
So It should be this one, which I just did.
Mhm.
Just to see
Nice.
everything.
Nice.
Looks good. So create pull requests.
Perfect. And there is really not much to say there in the content. All right, looks like you have a pull request. I'll take it from here. So I'm going to switch over to my GitHub. And let's see if I have an open pull request. Looks like I have an open pull request from Evan right here. So I'm just going to go ahead and pick that guy up. And, you know, as a person who's maintaining the system. Okay, so here's one for you. I don't think you need this. I don't think you need that change in here because the root the root file of storage broker already has that. The root file of storage broker already has this piece. If you go into core and if you go into broker storages and you go into storage broker, already has this implementation right here. That reference, sorry, in here. So the partial classes underneath don't really need to have that one, you know, because it's already being referenced for implementation in one partial class. Here's another nice trick that I can show you. Did you know that you can actually change the code from here without having to actually pull the code down? In fact, actually, the people that are doing the code review could just go and select this, like I'm going to do right now. I'm going to select this little piece, and I'm going to do suggestion. I'm just going to delete it. That's all I'm going to do. Like this here is just going to select this area. I don't think it actually did select it. Let's see here. So let me copy this whole line in here, except that I'm going to delete this piece. You see, this is just a suggestion, and you can go and like this, and I say 3 ticks, I think. And I'm gonna do the ticks back in here. So check this out. Now, I am basically saying in the preview, I'm just gonna remove this from here. See this guy? So if I say add a single commit comment and say commit suggestion, I can actually commit this. I don't think it's gonna let me because I don't have access to your branch, would it? Oh, it did. Nice, nice, nice. So now if I refresh this again, if you look at the commit history, now you have 2 commits, and one of them is one that says, hey, you don't need that storage broker. Now I think this PR is in good stage. I can just go ahead and confirm the merge, and boom, we have a merge, right? So if I look now at my master branch, I should be able to see your changes, storage brokers, broker storages, and then in the posts area, I see the implementation. What do you think about that? Does that sound like a plan? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Now let's go back to my part. You know, do you guys remember, guys watching, you know, so now we finished 2 tasks. See how fast we can go. So this is done and this is done. Now we're going to do this piece in here, right? And this piece is actually where the business logic is. So we already did the integration with the database in this video and a previous video. We already done the broker, and now comes this piece. And this piece is where things get a little bit more interesting because this is where you actually see the dynamic of doing pair programming, you know, with engineers, you know, from everywhere, like smart engineers like Evan and everybody else that I worked, or hopefully will work with in the future. You know, we'll get to see that kind of dynamic. So I'm going to create a new branch. And because Evan is already a contributor to my repo, he'll be able to push to that branch as well. But first, before I do any of that, and now I'm going to minimize literally everything because I want the focus to be mainly on nothing but the code and where I am creating my code, the files that I create the code. So I'm going to go back to master. And from master, I'm just going to go ahead and get latest. Package manager, get pull. I'm a kind of an old school guy. I do it through the command line. There you go. So this is it pulled everything. Technically, I should be able to see Evan's changes. So select all, perfect. Now I'm gonna go ahead and create a new folder, which is the services. And because this is a new project from scratch, this is the very first service that we're gonna be building. So there's services, and under services, there are types of services. So that's foundations. You know, if you want to learn more about this, I will provide a link in the in this video, you know, to show you, you know, what is our engineering standard and what does foundation services means. And then under foundations, I'm gonna do posts. And then I'm going to create two things. I'm going to create an interface called iPost service. Yes. So that's one. And the other one would be post service. But before I do iPost service, I want to actually write the function that I care about. And that function would be iQueryable. Watch the difference in the language here. So this is post. And in here, I'm going to say retrieve all posts like this. That's my interface. Now, I need my concrete class. What I'm going to do with my concrete class, in my concrete class, I need to implement post service, which is the concrete class to confirm to that contract. And here is remove unnecessary, add file. And now I need to start with my dependencies. First of all, before I start my dependency, I'm going to go ahead in here and say, look at this smart guy, just auto-completing things for me. So there you go. Control period. It went ahead and implemented and pulled all the details I need. This one I don't like though. Why did it do it this way? Let's pull in the system directives, just like this. Okay, this is perfect. But in order for this implementation to be successful, and I can write a successful failing test because this is test driven. There's three different patterns that I'm doing in here. This is test driven development. So we write the test first, make it fail, and then make the test pass. Number two, it's pure code, meaning that every little commit and every little action we do, we create a commit for it. And when it constitutes a valuable component, we make a pull request to it. So I did migration, that's worthy of a pull request. Go ahead, the migration is done. We can stop there and let someone else pick up from there. Evan did the select all, the implementation interface. It's a broker. We don't need to unit test our brokers. They're literally meant to encapsulate and wrap up third-party libraries. So we don't care about that one. You know, we create a pull request, we merge it. But now we're going to write some tests. And this is where all the good stuff come in. I'm going to just define my dependencies in here. So private, read only. Look, it's trying to be smart with the repository pattern, but I don't use the repository pattern. I use something a little bit different from a repository pattern called iStorage broker, kind of a mishmash of repository pattern versus clients versus, you know, some old school and new school stuff that makes things a lot more generic. The only reason why I don't use the repository pattern is because, you know, it's very specific in its terminology to storages. And I want something more generic than storages. Like if I go one day and say I want to flip out, from storage to APIs, I can still have what I call brokers, except that they're targeting APIs instead of storages. Here's the beautiful part about this. This is always something that makes people happy. If I select all of this and do control period, it can generate a constructor for me with all the dependencies just outside of the box. But yet, I still don't have any implementation in place. This is where I need to come in and actually write a failing test first. So Evan, get ready because I'm going to give you a failing test. Let's go ahead and delete this delete me file. We don't need it anymore. And then I'm going to create a folder in here that is called, it should match and mirror exactly the exact same folder structure to the services, the same structure that I have on my core project. So the services foundations. And then under foundations, there is the posts area. And under the posts area, I'm going to start writing some code in here. So here's the deal. Here's a class. Here is, what did we call it? Post service tests, right? So let's set up our tests first. This is where I'm going to set up the tests. Every test has a root file, and this root file basically has a bunch of good stuff in there, like all the little methods that you need. Think of it as utility, right? Utilities, but it's very focused and very specific to the entity that we're working with in here. So this is a public partial class because we're going to have multiple partial class for this post service tests. And I'm going to start defining some things. Read only mock. I need the mock framework in here. And I'm going to mock my dependencies so I don't actually call the actual database. So I need to pull in here my core service for testing. It's a subject of test. And then in here, I'm going to say storage broker mock. Okay, that's one. Let's get the other one. Read only mock iLogging broker. Perfect. iLogging broker. Why can it not define or find my logging broker? Let's say, do we have an iLogging broker? Maybe we forgot that one. Oh, we don't have logging broker. How did it know Oh, it defined logger instead of logging broker. Okay, let's go ahead and just create a logging broker real quick. Here, loggings. Let's go ahead and define a quick interface called iLoggingBroker.cs. It's gonna be real quick to add in a logging broker right there. So here, logging broker. CS. It's just a wrapper, another wrapper around any existing either out of the box third party or native Microsoft library for logging your errors, right? So in here, what do I need? I really need to log all the errors that I have. I'm gonna just, bring this from other projects I have because it's not really that hard to put logging brokers into the system. It's they are almost exactly the same unless you decide to use something different. Like if you want to switch from native Microsoft logging to Serolog or something, that's your choice. But see, we're building just a bunch of interfaces, and nothing should change actually on your contract. Like whether you're using Microsoft, just like I showed you in a previous video, nothing should ever change from a logging standpoint. I'm gonna go ahead in here and say iLogging broker. See, it's very smart. It knows how to implement this. But if I do control period in here, it's not that smart. If I do control period, oh wait, no, it does honor. See, the Visual Studio 19, it didn't really honor the order. No, this one is not honoring the order either. Starting from critical, and then it should have jumped to error, but it went to debug. It's not really honoring that severity order that I have. See, I start with information, trace, debug, warning, error, critical. This order is intentional. Unfortunately, it's still 2022. It doesn't know how to pick that up. Doesn't know how to pick that order up. So that's okay. I'm gonna go ahead and just pull in the existing implementation from OSSS. Also an open source project that you can take a look at. Really easy and simple, and it has some very useful information there. Here you go. Okay, we have some dependencies here that we need to pull in, and Control KE will clean up your usings, and that's all. That's all the stuff. Okay, I have a logging broker. Okay, just a little hick in the road here, and I'm gonna just go submit that as its own. So I'm just gonna say brokers logging broker. Okay, and I'm just gonna stage only these things. So I'm gonna stage just this guy, just to keep the purity of my code in place. This is logging broker commit stage. Okay, this one is in place. Okay, let's go back to this guy. So now it's not iLogger, it should be iLogging broker, because I don't want a third-party library, even native library, to kind of violate and leak into my business logic. Your services should always be dealing with a wrappers, or contracts that abstract away either third-party libraries or underneath dependencies that you want them to keep abstracted from each other. A lot of patterns, a lot of things that I'm saying really fast, but hopefully, some of that will land on the right ears and right audience, and they'll understand what I'm trying to say here. Okay, so I'm setting up my service. There's no implementation here. This is where Evan is going to come in and make this happen. Now let's go ahead and fix this. Let's have, this is my logging broker. So this is logging broker mock. And then let's define the actual service that we're trying to test, which is iPost service. Here's my iPost service. This is post service. This is not a mock. This is the actual subject of my test. And here's a constructor. And let's go ahead and instantiate all of these guys. Control period or tab should do the trick here. Here's one. This dot logging broker. Love the autocomplete power in here. Instead of having to do control space, it just works with me. Okay, so this dot post service equal new post service. Here we go. And then I'm gonna go ahead and say, all right, I need a storage broker. So there's the alias. This dot storage broker moxie is really smart. It's trying to tap. Nice. And logging broker mock, which is logging broker tap. I already understand. AI is doing some magic here with me, like really going with me, building the code as I go and trying to learn my patterns. Okay. So this is the first piece. I'm instantiating a test in here with, I've already mocked, kind of stubbed out all the dependencies. And now I instantiated an instance of my service. Instead of having the real dependency, instead of calling the real SQL server and storage broker, and instead of calling the real logging, why did I do login? It should be logging broker. And instead of calling the real logging broker, it's just, calling a mock of that. Now I need somehow for my test to generate a bunch of iQueryable posts, right? So let me go ahead in here and use a library called Dynamics Object Filler. Beautiful library, helps me build things real quick, randomize the values and the data. And I'm going to tell you in a second why we randomize this. So let's just go ahead and build filler. There's a filler. Do I have that library in here? Yes, I do. And this filler is going to generate posts for me, random posts. Create posts filler. So this is a filler function that will take care of generating random fillers for me. So this is a filler post. It's perfect. And here is filler.setup. And I'm gonna start, like, ideally filler setup should be enough, but because there are types that the filler dynamics is not familiar with, like date time offset, we're gonna have to go and generate that on our own. Like, it can generate for a lot of types, but some of these types it's not really familiar with. So I'm gonna go ahead and say use, and I'm saying get random date time offset. So this guy here is a function that I'm about to build, but at the end I'm returning my filler, so that's fine. This get random date time offset, let me generate that guy. That guy shouldn't be at the bottom because this is something actually that I need to, that we're gonna need to use in future foundation services in here. So this is the get date time offset. I need to generate a random date time offset. Again, from the filler, I can do date time range with an earliest date since the beginning of time. So date time, because I don't care at this point. And then I just need to get the value. So this will generate a random date time offset for me. And it's gonna be used in here to generate a bunch of posts for me. This filler alone just helps me, create a filler, but I still need a function that returns that number, random number of posts. Well, did you say random number? Yes, I did. Let's go ahead and build another function in here that gets me a random number. And let's not go crazy with the numbers. Let's just go and say int range minimum 2, maximum 10. 10 is not inclusive, it's exclusive. So it starts from 2. That's the minimum multiple things that you could generate. And then the maximum here, it will generate numbers from 2 to 9. So max here is exclusive. It's exclusive. Be aware of this little piece because a lot of people think, oh, maybe I should do 11 so it can give me 10. Nope, doesn't work like that. Okay. The last thing we want to do, we want to generate an iQueryable, right? So static iQueryable. Here's my iQueryable in here, and I want to return an iQueryable of posts. So this is create random posts. This is what I'm going to use for my test. And now I have my create post filler, right? And then I'm going to go create, and then I'm going to say count. I need a random count, so get random number right here. And then I'm going to say get let's see, I think it's create. Come on, give me something. Oh, it's already create. I just want to say as queryable. A second here. What is this guy saying? Cannot. Oh, get random. Yeah, get random. Get random number. That's right. Thanks, Evan. That's perfect. So that's a random number, and then I want to say as queryable. There you go. Perfect. As queryable. So this guy is gonna give me a bunch of random posts that I can use to pretend that my storage broker here is returning the right stuff. Okay, here comes business. Here comes the failing test. I'm going to copy this guy. Let's make sure that this is partial. Yes, it is. This is the core one. I'm going to go down here and create a new file. Here's my new file. Actually, since I copied that, I could just paste. Yep, there it is. Now watch what I'm going to do here. This is going to be the same one. It's partial, but it's called logic. And this is what I'm going to keep all my logic validation. There are going to be validations and there are going to be exceptions. All of that stuff, is going to be coming down the road, while we're building this system. Okay, so This is my logic. I don't need all the data that I copied from the original file. Control KE will clean up your unneeded usings. And then let's go ahead and write our actual real test, first unit test. The setup is sometimes takes a little bit of time, but everything else should be fine. Okay, it's trying to be smart against this, should return null when. I don't necessarily follow that particular pattern. I really don't like underscores unless I really need them, for, discarding a value. So I'm just going to go ahead and say should return posts. That's all. Okay. I have a given and a when and a then. Some people use assert, arrange, assert, or action, something like that. Sure. Given when then seems to be more businessy and more focused on requirements than kind of a nerdy language like assert, arrange, whatever. This is much better. Something that you can actually take and use when you're talking to someone who's not necessarily technical and they would understand exactly what you're trying to say. So what is our given? I have a given in here that I queryable of post. Let's pull these references right away so they don't bother us. I need a random posts. This is create random posts. That's one. Perfect. And from these random posts, I want another variable called storage posts. These are the storage posts that I'm getting from the database. And then from these storage posts, I want to create another variable called expected posts. See, they're all the same thing. It's just the language that's different. So they make sense when I'm using them. They're all the same thing, except that the language itself is different. And if you look at these, they will tell you the story. The story is that we're going to get some storage posts, and these storage posts are going to be our expected. With the input kind of test, things get a little bit even clearer. So I'm just going to go ahead in here and set up my mock. And my mock here is my storage mock setup broker.select all posts. And this select all posts should return, all right, storage posts. See, if I say return expected posts, it'd be kind of weird, right? I'm saying storage posts. This is all I care about. Okay. Here's my iQueryable. Here's my post. And these are my actual posts. So this is here me actually running the test. So this dot service dot retrieve all posts. So I already mocked the dependencies. This service is gonna go and try to call that dependency. And it's gonna try to select all the posts. And because I set that up, it should return exactly what I expect it to return to match this actual post. So now the verification time, I can go and say actual post should, did I install Fluent Assertions? Yes, I did. So should be equivalent to expected post. See how the language here is much better? Instead of saying should be equivalent to storage posts. Nope, you have expected. What else do I need to verify? I want to verify that my storage broker was only called once. So this is my broker, right? Select all posts. This storage broker was only called just one time. Here it is, that once. What else? I want to make sure all my dependencies, no other methods in any of my dependencies have been called during the execution of this process. So nobody called any other method on storage broker of any, and nobody called any other method on logging broker of any. Now we should be having a failing test. Let's run this guy. If I do Control RT, it should do the trick for me. I don't know if that changed in Visual Studio 2022. Here we go. Let's see and find out what happened. Evan, are you excited? You're gonna have a failing test right now. Let's see. Here's a test. I normally don't rely so heavily on the UI to run my tests. I just do .NET tests, but this also works for visualization. And you'll see that little fire in here for, to apply code changes, and I think it's hot reload and stuff. So that's also pretty cool. Now I think it's running it in debug mode. Let's go to Test Explorer in here. Let me put that break and let me run the world here real quick. Let's see if it can detect. Yeah, I have this one test right here. Let's see. There you go. I have a failing test. And the failing test says, hey, the method that you're calling is not implemented. So that's my part. My part stops right here. As someone who's pairing with Evan, I write a failing test. This is called the ping pong kind of pattern. So I wrote a failing test. I set up the test. I set up the everything. Now I'm just writing a failing test. Here's my failing test. Fail. Now it's going to be Evan's turn to go. I'm going to push to that branch. Oh, I need to create a new branch first. Yikes, I forgot. So users Hassan Habib slash foundation post add. Oh, be careful, Evan, because when I tried to do this before, it was foundation. So this foundations post add. Foundations post add. So you're gonna have to pull down that branch and push against that same branch, not your own branch. You're gonna be pushing exactly against that same branch, on your side. All right, so here's this guy. So you see, I took the name of the failing test, I put it up here, and I said this guy with a thin arrow is failing, and I'm handing this over to Evan to take care of it. Go ahead. Your turn.
Mhm.
All right.
So
Mhm.
the branch should be in here.
Mhm.
So
The
yeah,
second one.
foundations
Foundations
post.
post add. The second one.
Okay, so this should be good then.
Yep. All right, here we go. Perfect.
And now that I've pulled it, I can create a new branch.
Are you gonna be able to push against the same branch that I created?
Yeah, I guess I could do that.
All right.
So
Because you and I are gonna be pairing on the same branch, so you don't have to sync. It's all coming and going from the same branch. Mhm. All right. Perfect. All right, so you should have a failing test. Let's run the test and see if you have a failing test. Looks like you already have the right files in there.
it's loading.
All right.
There we go.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so the method is not implemented, meaning like in the services, I go to post service. I need to basically make this method work. So uh, right now it's not implemented, but I will just do
Okay.
this dot storage broker. So the storage broker will select all posts.
And is this gonna be coming from the database directly?
Uh, no, because it's just a reference to the
It's already
storage broker.
mocked. Yeah, it's already mocked. We already mocked it. Yep. Okay, perfect.
And then I will return storage post.
Perfect.
So I think that is it. So now if I run the test, it should be okay.
Let's do it.
Let's see.
Beautiful. Let's commit that guy. But now that you made that test pass, you owe me something, right? You owe me a failing test, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So what's going to be the next test? Let's handle the situation where the database, now it's not a perfect world. Sometimes the database will have issues, right? So let's say the database threw a SQL exception, right? So a SQL exception came out of the database and we want to be able to handle, whatever happens, in the database, how our service is going to handle that. So I'll let you write the test and explain how things go there.
Okay, so I'm making a new file that will also be a subset, because this is no longer logic, but rather it's exceptions.
Nice.
And this is specifically for
For the retrieval.
retrieve all.
Yeah. Yeah. That's perfect. I forgot to do that for my logic file as well. Perfect. Perfect.
So that's public partial class service test. So now I need to make a failing test.
Okay.
I believe it's async void should.
I don't think we're asynchronous, so you don't need async. You just need it to be void. Yeah. Yeah.
Void should throw
Mhm.
dependency exception.
Yeah, it's a dependency exception. That's right. So we would take that SQL exception and convert it into a local exception. So we abstract away our business logic. When a service is throwing a SQL, when our dependency is throwing a SQL exception and log it. But it's not on add though. I think it's on retrieve, right? On retrieval, right?
Yeah. Unretrieval.
Perfect. Are we over 120 characters? I don't think we are. We keep things to 120 characters, so unless, Evan and I are having the display here on 150, 175%, but usually 120 characters is kind of the maximum for anyone who's using a smaller screen. So we don't want people to be scrolling right and left, going through 150 lines of code like a wide characters. It would make things a little bit easier. Evan, do you want to just move your list on the right just a tiny bit so people can see the entire test name? Yeah, thank you so much. All right, what are you gonna do now?
Okay, now I have to set up the test, I guess. So
Yes, sir.
first we create a post um random. Do we have random posts? I
hmm
don't think we have that
We
yet.
we do have it. We do have it, but I don't think it matters here because we're never gonna return any posts. I think what we're gonna do is that we're going to need to first create a new model under posts in your service, under exceptions folder, and call that model post dependency exception. Let's start from there. So
Okay,
add folders, and let's call it exceptions. Perfect. And under exceptions, we're gonna need to create one that says what? What are we gonna call it, Evan?
uh, it's gonna be in
No, the SQL exception is already coming from the database. Let's call it post dependency exception. So we're basically saying that our post service have experienced an exception caused by one of its dependencies. Perfect. All right. Now what? What should we say inside that exception? Let's inherit from the main exception class. And then we want to communicate to our consumers, the people that will consume our services if SQL is down. We don't want to tell them the details of what happened. That would be a security issue. But instead, we just want to tell them, hey, we have a dependency issue. Please contact support. So let's just tell them that. So you're building a constructor. So a constructor will need to take an input parameter, which would be the inner exception that we just received. Let's do it. Yep. Yep. Inner exception. And that inner exception will go in at whatever dependency error we receive. But in our base class, which is the main exception, we're gonna communicate a message that says, post dependency error occurred, contact support. So that's basically our consumers coming back to us and saying, hey, I tried to contact your API and I received an issue. I received a problem with, my ability to to connect to the system.
Guess that.
Right? Okay, and let's pass the inner exception as well. This is why we got it, right? Let's pass that inner exception in addition to the message itself.
Should be good now.
All right. Post dependency error occurred, contact support. That's what our API is going to be throwing if a SQL exception occurred. Okay, so you have the exception that you need to handle. Perfect. Now let's go ahead and write a test that says, an expected post dependency exception will happen. So let's start with the exceptions. What's the exception that we're trying to handle? The SQL, right? Let's create a SQL exception first.
So
Let's name it with its type. Just type SQL exception instead of var because the right side of this is not going to be as straightforward as we'd like to think. SQL exceptions are abstract classes, so instantiating those is kind of weird, and I'm going to show you now how we're going to do this. But let's just go ahead and type, yep, there's your SQL exception right there, and then let's just call it SQL exception. And then instantiating a SQL exception is very, very interesting because instantiating the SQL exception as an abstract class is not exactly as straightforward as we'd like it to be. But it's not a mystery anymore because we already figured out a way to go and instantiate a SQL exception. I'm going to send you a little line of code in here, and I'm going to let you through Teams, and I'm going to let you use that line of code in our main class, main test class. There it is. All right. And that guy will go in our root class, so you can call that function, right? So the two lines of code that I just gave you will go into the root test file, so you can call that function that says get SQL, right? Let's put the implementation of this right under create random posts. We try to give the order for methods that are more likely to be used outside of this file. So these are the kind of methods that people are going to be looking for. So let's put it in here. Yep. And then try to pull in all the references and all that. So this is some really odd way of instantiating a SQL exception, but it works. It's magic. So let's go back into our tests here. And let's use that to instantiate the SQL exception. Okay, so this is one part, Evan. What's the second part? We need to, yeah, you're going the right track. Get SQL exception. So that's one part. The second part, don't forget your given when then, so people that are watching us know which part is which. Perfect. Okay, So this is a given. One of the given things that we have is that we want, so a SQL exception is going to happen. And this SQL exception will be wrapped up in a post dependency exception, right? So let's write in our expected post dependency exception, which is going to look exactly, something very similar to what we have there. So let's go ahead and just type var expected post dependency exception. Okay. And we're going to create a new one, right? Remember the class that we created, the new post dependency exception?
This exception with exceptions.
Perfect. Exactly. It takes in that SQL exception as an input, right? And since, if you wanna keep it this way, that's fine. You wanna remove that empty new line, yep. Or you can break the other one into two, either way. Okay. Now, how do we fake? We want to fake that event. We want to say when we try to contact storage, we should blow up with a SQL exception. How are we going to do that?
Well, we need to have our mock broker make it so that when the when retrieval runs, it returns a SQL exception.
Precisely. Let's do it.
So let me just so it would be this dot stored broker mock dot setup. Select all posts.
That's right.
And it would return.
I don't think it'll return anything. It's gonna throw an exception, right?
Throws.
Which exception is it gonna throw?
Going to throw the
SQL, right? Yeah. So the mock will throw a SQL exception, and we are going to take care of figuring out whether our service is actually going to be doing the right thing or not when it comes to handling that guy. Perfect. All right, next step. What are we going to do here? In the when section, we just want to define the action. We're not really going to call the function. In the logic piece, we went and actually called the function, But in here, we're not going to do that. Let's go and define an action. Just type action in here. Right? And this action would be retrieve all posts action as a variable name. No, as a variable name. Perfect. Now, how do I encapsulate my function call in an action? Do an open close parentheses and then a fat arrow, and then just call the function after that. Taking a new line to the next line, and just do this dot service. Keep going, service. Yep, and then retrieve all. Perfect. Okay. Now, Evan, how do I know this action is going to throw the right exception? Now we're going to go into the validation part of all of this.
So I want to make sure that the stored, first I want to make sure that the
we want to assert, right? We want to assert that this exception was thrown, right? So let's do assert. Throws. Yeah, keep going.
Well, it would be the expected.
No, the retrieve. We want to actually validate. So before you actually call the action function in here, you probably want to open an angle bracket after throws, You want to open an angle bracket and you want to put in there the exception that you expect your function to throw. So that we expect is post dependency exception, right? The actual type of an exception that's called post dependency exception, right? That's right. And then inside that guy, we can just call retrieve all post action. That's right. There you go. So this is literally what I did in here. We basically went and said, when this retrieve all post action executes, we expect it to throw post dependency exception because the dependencies, the storage broker that this method is going to be calling or this action is going to be calling, it's going to be throwing a SQL exception that we're going to be wrapping inside a dependency exception. Okay, what else do we need to verify in here?
We need to make sure that the storage broker only called select all posts once, right?
Perfect. Let's do that. Let's go for it.
So it's this dot storage broker dot verify.
That's right.
Posts.
Mm-hmm.
The comma.
That's right. So we want to make sure that we called this guy once. We didn't try to do anything smart. We didn't retry or anything. That's right. Okay. What else do we need to verify? We want to know that we actually, like in the name of the test, we verify that we throw a dependency exception, but we also log that dependency exception. And logging that dependency exception is very interesting. We want to go and say that my logging broker is throwing an exception that is similar to what I am trying to throw in here. I'm gonna send you a snippet of code to put in um, um, uh, your root test file that basically verifies that an instance, the value of the exception is similar. You know, it basically verifies the messages, which is what we communicate to our clients and what we communicate to ourselves. Let's put that right under the SQL exception, get SQL exception function. Right there. Perfect. And let's pull in all the little reference. What this basically does is says when you're using mock and you're trying to compare what's actually being logged through the logging broker versus what you expected, let's just validate the messages, which is what we really communicate to people. Can you do me a favor and put a tab behind expected exception dot message and behind and as well? One tab each. Perfect. That's it. Let's go back to your test. Yep, let's do it. So this one here is going to be logging what? So your broker, type in broker log critical because we're logging a critical error, right? Because that means a SQL exception, meaning that something horrible and terrible has happened that is not specific to one request, right? And in your critical log, you want to open parentheses and say it is, it.is, perfect. And in here, we're going to use that same exception as the function that we just created. And in here, we're going to pass in the expected exception that we created. That's right. And you're going to close a lot of parentheses here, I think 2 or 3 of them. And then you want to make sure that this was called only one time. Times once. Perfect. Perfect, Evan. That's it. Now, what else do we need to do after that? So this just for the people watching, you know, um, logging critical. Why is it critical? Because usually a SQL exception means that your connection string is broken, your database doesn't exist, something catastrophic that is not just impacting one request, it's impacting everything on your system. And these critical exceptions and these critical level exceptions or errors, the logs that we put in here, technically impacts your entire system. Therefore, we hook these up to alerts that notify the engineers that are maintaining the system immediately despite what hour of the day it is, to make sure, and based on the criticality of the business, of course, to make sure the system is running as expected. All right, Evan, what should we do after that?
Okay, I think that the only thing that we have left to do is to make sure that no other calls were called, I guess, from
Precisely. Absolutely. Let's do that.
this dot storage broker mock dot verify no other calls.
That's one, right? What is the second one? That's the logging broker, right?
Unless
Perfect.
oh yeah, that's it.
That's it. We don't have date time broker yet. We don't have anything yet. Okay, that's your theory. Let's go ahead and run the test and see if it fails. If it fails, voila, it's my turn. So that's your serve, basically. Okay. Perfect. So what is it saying? It's saying I expected you to throw a exception of type post dependency exception, but what I actually received is the SQL. So no wrapping has happened. The exception was thrown as SQL and we didn't wrap it up in the right error, right? Can you do me a favor before you commit this? Instead of saying should throw dependency exception, say should throw critical dependency exception. So that indicates the kind of, severity of the issue. And then go ahead and submit that to me and I'll make it pass. Is it over 120 here? No, it's good. Perfect. Fail. Perfect. So that's Evan giving me back a failing test. That says, hey, I made your test pass, your happy path. Now we're handling all the kinds of exceptions that may happen from that system. All right. Is it my turn yet?
I can just push from here, right?
Yeah, you could do that. If it goes to the right branch, you're in the right place. Yep. Did it go? Do you see that number 2 at the bottom? Yeah, there you go. It got in there. Okay, perfect. My turn. My turn. And I apologize for people, both sides of the aisle, the people that like dark mode and the people that hate dark mode, because the people that hate dark mode will really watch Evan more, and the people that like dark mode will people watch me more. So I'm sorry a little about the little seizure that I might be causing people here. Okay, so here's this. I'm gonna go ahead and pull here. So I'm gonna pull data. And technically, if I pull, I should be having a failing test. So I'm gonna run my tests in here. This is my previous failing test. I'm gonna run all my tests. I can see Evan's test right here. There you go. This is my acceptance test. Perfect. I have this failing test that Evan wrote, that caused, that exposed another issue that we need to tackle in our system. Is it okay if I, just kind of organize things a little bit here, Evan? Let's go ahead and do this part. Let's do this like this, and this is like that. I think it's okay if I put it like this. I like to keep things like in perspective in terms of readability. So I think this is fine. Expected post dependency exception, this is fine. And then I'm gonna add copyrights in here, just a little refactoring. Here's some copyrights at the top here. And while I'm at it, I'm just gonna run the profile for cleanup. So I'm just gonna run a cleanup for all the additional things, maybe a little tab here and there. Okay, and I'm gonna call this code rub cleanup. Now let's see if I can make your test pass. I'm gonna go ahead. So now I have a failing test. I know this fails. You have to always don't go write an implementation against the test that you don't even know if it's still passing or not. Okay. I'm gonna partialize this guy. And I'm gonna create another nested class in here. And I'm gonna call that class post service.exceptions.cs. And this guy's going to be a little bit different because we try to abstract away. I want the code to be beautiful. I want the code to be something that you want to read. Yeah, sometimes we have to handle so many exceptions that makes some engineers don't even want to handle these exceptions because they're very ugly from a readability standpoint. It burns a lot of cognitive resources from you as you are building your system. So instead, I came up with this pattern that abstracts that away. I'm going to show you that in a second. Returning posts functions. This is a little delegate. and I'm gonna go up in here and write a private method that return post. I'm gonna call it try catch. This guy is kind of a monad kind of thing. So it takes a function. It's a function that takes a function, and I'm wrapping it up in a try catch kind of pattern, and I'm returning this returning post function. So the function that's get passed in will be running in here. The only difference is whatever the function that I pass in here will be wrapped up in a try catch exception without harming the visual of this function from a business logic standpoint. The first exception I want to handle is just SQL exception in here. This is my SQL exception, SQL exception. In order for me to handle that exception, I need to see what Evan did. Evan said private post dependency exception is create and log critical dependency exception. And I'm gonna let the input parameter of this to be as generic as possible, because the input parameter in here can be any other exception. It doesn't have to just be SQL. It can be literally anything. So I'm gonna go ahead in here and say post dependency exception equal new post dependency exception like this, and then I need to go log that. So this dot logging broker dot log critical. Here's the piece that Evan was asking for in his test. So I'm logging this post dependency exception, and then at the end I'm gonna go and say post dependency exception returned here as a parameter. And now all I have to do is just go and say throw create and log dependency exception. Here's my SQL exception right here. Okay, so I'm running my code. I created a try catch function that wraps up whatever function that goes inside of it in a try catch pattern, and it handles that exception that comes out of here. Let me break that apart a little bit because I don't like things to be okay, perfect. Now this won't work. My test will still fail unless I do that wrapping up in here. So I'm gonna go up in here and say try catch like this. Here we go. Now I wrapped up the function, this anonymous function in here. I wrapped it up in another function called try catch. And this retrieve all is actually the one that's executing all of this. Let's see how that works. And instead of doing all of that, I'll just simplify the code a little bit. I'll refactor things a little bit. So I'm just gonna go ahead in here and make it just a single arrow function like this. Now I have everything, right? A function that will return this, it should basically pass your test. I can run my test straight from here, which is really, really a cool feature that exists in Visual Studio since the beginning. You can just find all the tests. There you go. So Evan's tests now passed. What do you think about that, Evan? That's perfect, right? Now, other than SQL exception, because we're not really doing any writing into the database, so we don't have to really handle duplicate record exceptions or DB update exception or, invalid reference exception, none of that. We're just reading, right? So that means there's one more exception that we need to handle, which is the kind of catch-all. So I'm gonna steal Evan's test in here, and I'm just gonna change it a little bit. I'm gonna go up in here and say should throw service exception on retrieve all if service error occurs and log it async. So now I'm doing something different. I'm basically saying everything should be the same, except that instead of throwing a dependency exception, I'm going to throw a service post service exception. And this is expected service exception instead of a dependency exception. So that changes things a little bit. And I'm not really logging critical anymore. I'm just logging an error because I don't know the criticality of this generic non-identified error that may happen. And what I'm really throwing is a post service exception. So I'm kind of cheating in here. I'm using Evan's work to kind of build my test in here real quick, right? And I don't need that SQL exception anymore. What I actually need is a var service exception, which is the generic exception that will come from, like I always say, you can copy pasta and as long as you know what you're doing. If you don't know what you're doing, that's a big problem. You're gonna get caught and it's gonna look bad, right? That's service exception right here. Okay, great. Maybe my service exception will have some message in it and I want to make sure the message is right. Let's do our due diligence in here and generate a random message that goes into this new exception. Yeah, why not? Let's do that. So let's go down here and say private static string, get random message or random string, and your dynamics will do that for you. So if you go and say mnemonic string, right, and we can throw a bunch of word count in there. So let's make our word count also random. So get random number, and let's get that message in here, get value like this. So now I can go back here to my exception that I'm trying to build and say string exception message, get random message. And now I'm going to pass that in here as a message into that exception. Now, the only thing that's left is that I need to create post service exceptions. So let's go back to my model here. And let's go ahead and create a new class, post service exception.cs. And in this guy, I can just do exception. I can do CTOR, right? CTOR basically will create that constructor for me. And then this is inner exception. Did you know about this one, Evan? The CTOR piece. So this is this guy, and then like there's a lot of shortcuts in here that could make life so much easier, right? So this is post service error occurred. Also contact support. There's no action from the client, the consumer side. We just tell them, hey, contact support. When we say dependency versus service exception, your client will be calling you or sending you a screenshot or whatever, and it will be telling you, I got a post service error occurred versus a client that will tell you, I got a post dependency error occurred, right? They don't know. To them, it's the exact same action. To both of them, it's basically you saying something wrong has happened and you need to contact support. So the end action is the same, but the language that they're using will tell you immediately whether it's something in your system that you need to take care of or it's something in some other dependency that you need to look at. So even before you look at the code, just by reading the message of your client or consumer, you already know what's wrong with your system and where to look. And that's the beauty of the naming conventions and the language that we use here to build these exceptions. Let's go back to my test here real quick. So in here, I'm basically saying, yeah, you should throw a service exception on retrieval if service error occurs and log it async. Here's my exception. There's post service exception, select all, boom, boom. All of this is good. This guy should technically fail, right? That would be me serving the ping pong ball back to you, Evan. There we go. There you go. This is failing. It's saying I expected you to throw a post service exception, but what I actually received is a service exception. Okay, are you ready to make that one pass, Evan? Here you go. This one fail. Okay, here you go. Commit all and push. All right, you're it. So you guys can see now as you're watching this session, you see the back and forth. Pair programming, building software in general can be a beautiful social experience because you're working with people, sharing experiences, sharing shortcuts, talking about all the different things that you can do in a particular system. All right. If you go back to your Visual Studio directly and just poll, it should get you that stuff that you're looking for. Mm-hmm. Yep. Let's run all your tests and let's see. All right.
So, should just be right here.
Yep. All right.
Yes. So I need to go to yeah. Yeah, if I go here and then I will eventually need to a generic exception, right?
That's right. That's right. We need to handle that generic exception. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Bro, create and log not critical, but
Just a service exception. Mm-hmm.
um, which we need to create.
Perfect.
Um, the log service.
Mm-hmm.
Which will take in an which will take in an exception.
Yep. Yeah, very generic exception. It could be anything. Mm-hmm.
And why not?
Yep.
Get easier to read. And then variable post dependency exception.
I don't know. Are you actually creating a
Yes,
dependent? Mm-hmm.
service exception
That's right. That's right.
is a new post service exception.
Mm-hmm.
Logging broker. This one is just a error.
Just an error. Yep. It's not critical. We don't know that. Shouldn't wake up the engineers in the middle of the night. Tell them something is broken that is just maybe a memory leakage or a recycling of an API or something. Mm-hmm. And this guy should give you an error because the return type on your method is not the same, right? Mm-hmm.
So it should be a post service exception. There we go.
Perfect. All right. Technically, your test should pass. Let's run all the tests. Let's run the world, and let's see if that actually is true. There you go. Your acceptance will probably fail because you still have the same database. If you remove the database from your SQL, so go into SQL Server Object Explorer. You did make the test pass, which is perfect. I'm just helping you with the acceptance here. Let's find the Tarafu existing database because you know how we changed the migrations and reverted back some stuff. Let's just take out the database from the previous changes that you have, since this is just a development environment. That would be the top one. And let's take Taraf out of it. And then if you run your acceptance test again, it might just do the trick for you, I think. There you go.
Database.
There it is. Let's blow that one off. Right click, delete. Yep. Yep. All right. Let's run your acceptance test once more. Yeah, you should do the trick and try to provision a new database. Oh, really? What's there that you're getting on that one? Let's see. You're gonna have to expand it. Yep. Let's see. Yep. You wanna double click on it. Yeah, there it is. There's there. Yep. Let's see what's there. What's it saying? One or more error couldn't load file or a simply extensions features version 6. Are you
I'm on the
are you
preview
huh?
version.
You're on what?
I am on the preview version with .NET 6.
Right. Microsoft extensions features version 1 and then saying API broker. Interesting. Do you want to do like a quick rebuild of the entire solution and clean up? Sometimes it just helps to kind of go all the way to the top of your solution level in the Solution Explorer and just try to rebuild the world. Scroll all the way up to your solution, right click on solution, and then just rebuild the entire solution. Technically, these tests should technically do a build, not a rebuild. But let's just see if that works out.
Okay.
Yeah, it's still failing? Or oh, you're just running it? Okay.
Yeah, let's see.
Did it fail before when you were running the system, or this just happened? You know?
I believe it has failed before.
Oh, okay. Let's give it a second there.
Hmm.
Ah, interesting. And also I noticed, do you see that little warning sign on the right side of your dependencies? You want to open that one up and see what that warning sign is? You see it on your dependencies, right side, top right side. You were at it.
Let's see.
Packages.
Packages.
What's up with this guy?
Do I need
Looks
to?
like looks like we have some funny business in our kind of dependencies. 6 preview. Huh. Interesting. Let's do a right click on your solution on your project and fix that dependency issue that you have.
Or on this one?
Yeah. I wonder, yeah, you said this was happening before, even before yeah, I was wondering if Visual Studio 2022 is doing something funny with it. Yep, go ahead. Manage this guy.
Hmm.
So no updates. Everything is good and dandy. No problem, right?
Yep.
Interesting. Do you want to give me control real quick so we can take a look at it?
Sure.
Yep, there it is. Perfect. There you go. Yeah, let's see if we can fix this problem. So, stop that guy here, and this guy is saying system aggregate exception, file not found, could not load file, or is simply this guy because could not find the file specified. What do you think about, here's a crazy idea for you. What do you think about running this guy as admin? Just let's shoot in here. Let's shoot some stuff. Let's try different things. Right click here. You should be able to run this project in administrator mode. And see, usually when it's IO errors, it's either, you're trying to create something that is not, is there, but you don't have the access to it, or something else is happening on your system. Right? But once I run this in admin mode, I won't be able to touch it because Teams won't let you touch a project. It won't let a remote control touch something that's running in administrator mode. Okay, so open TowerAuthor in here and close the previous one. And I'm going to lose control here. And then I'm going to let you kind of drive with the admin based version. Give it a second there.
Let me see if I can.
Yep, just give it 1 sec. Get there.
I still haven't closed the other Visual
Yeah.
Studio.
Oh, okay. I think it's closed, right? Or no?
I don't think so.
Okay. Is all your projects? Oh, they are on the C folder, and sometimes the C partition. And the C partition sometimes have particular permissions for accessing particular files, and that's might be the reason why you're running into that problem. So let's see if that's. Usually, I just put all my code in the D drive, partition, just so I don't have to. Okay, there we go.
Let me.
Let's kill that guy. Yep, perfect. Perfect. Let's run the test again and let's see what happens.
Here, this is the.
Mm. Yeah, while you're doing that, I'm trying this from my side as well, just to see. It looks like it looks like it's functional for me from an acceptance test standpoint. No, just wait for it. Yeah. Or is this this is the one that's not admin? Yeah, let's kill that one. Yep.
I'll just minimize it from
Yep, yep. Yeah, close program.
this one. I think this one should.
Okay.
Oh,
hmm Okay, let's see if this one would pass. If we do the running and yeah.
okay. The other Visual Studio close.
Yeah, perfect. Let's give this guy a second there. I think the last unit test that you wrote is the final one, and we could create a PR for this one specifically, and then the last task would be to create a controller, right?
Yeah.
And then we can test it, and then that would be a full pairing session. Retrieve all end-to-end pair programming, you get to learn a few things about the system. And every single pair programming session that I've ever had, there was always something new to learn, a new shortcut, a new technology, something didn't know about the person I'm pairing with. There's always something new to learn there in every session. But at the end of the day, the code quality that comes out of it is always better. And more importantly, there's something else in addition to that. In pair programming sessions, you don't have to, wait for someone to become available to actually help you understand something. It's actually a dedicated time, for you and this other person. Hopefully it would be a senior on the team or something, that would actually help you solve the problem that you're trying to work with. Okay, so for this problem that you have, just for the recording time, that's you and I right after the recording. Let's you and I go and fix this together, right? But for now, let's create a PR, and it seems like it's something about the installation on your machine or something, so we can fix that together. But let's just go ahead and commit that. So what is the test that you just made pass? That was the service exception, right?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Let's commit that guy. And then you and I will stop the recording so people people don't have to wait like a couple hours just figuring out. Yeah, 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 yeah. Perfect. So this is passed. Go ahead and create a PR out of that guy. Right after you've done it.
Okay. Oh wait, okay. Commit on push.
That's right.
And then now to create a pull request.
That's perfect.
Um,
There you go. Yep. Yep. Here's a pull request, and then let's give it a nice name. So foundations, all uppercase, and then foundations, and then retrieve all hosts. That's right. And because, normally it's a title, make everything uppercase, like just the A and all and P and post. Yep. Yep, there you go. It's like you're writing a title, right? So everything needs to be up there, right? Yep. Let's create a pull request for that one. All right, I'm gonna take it from here. Okay, so you made the test pass. I'm gonna go look at that pull request on Taruffle. Now, for the people watching this session, and thank you for your patience with us, you can see here in the commit history, you can see how beautiful this is, right? It shows, okay, Evan, wrote a failing test I made it pass, and then I wrote a failing test, and then he made it pass, right? And so on and so forth. Actually, it's like this. It's I wrote a failing test, he made it pass. He wrote a failing test, I did a code cleanup, and then I made it pass, and then I wrote a failing test, and then he made it pass. This is what I call pair programming, pure pair programming, because you can see, even hour by hour, minute by minute, what this team was doing. Team of engineers were working on together. They ran into problems. You can see minute by minute how the code have progressed into what it is right now. How you know that this is looking right? You see 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2 like this, unless there's like a cleanup that needs to happen. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and merge this, Evan, into here. And then comes the final stage, right? So I'm going to create a new PR now, a new branch. And in this final stage, I'm going to do one piece and you're going to be doing the other piece. So it's for the people that are watching. Now we are at this stage in here where we have finished the service. Now let's start the controller piece, which is the last task. So this retrieve all post is done. And now we're in progress of finishing this final task. And that's how you're building experience, basically. You're building all the components that would make you experience into building end-to-end APIs from storage to the API, through the database with ASP.NET Core, pairing with people, learning from people, and all that kind of good stuff. Okay, let's create a new branch. I'm gonna go and switch over to master and then sync up master real quick. There we go. Okay, my master branch is synced up with everything. I'm gonna run everything just for the people to understand. Well, it works on my machine. I don't care. Now, pair programming kind of prevents you from doing that because you have to work with people and their stuff has to work in order for everyone to be able to progress on the task. So their success becomes your success while you are building a system like that. Okay, let's create a new branch. So a new branch is users, Hassan Habib slash controllers. That's the type, and then post, and then post. Sorry, get all. So that's basically the branch that I'm creating. See how here's the type, the category, the entity, and then the action that's going to be performed. So we need a controller, right? But before we do a controller, I think we forgot something, Evan. We forgot to register that service and the logging broker and everything. Otherwise, that system won't work, right? So let's go ahead. See, that's the beauty of integration and testing things end to end. So I'm gonna go ahead and, register transient here, logging broker. And I think I also need to register the logger. So this is logging broker. There it is. And I think I can also go ahead in here and say services.add logger, add logging up there. And then I need to register the service that you and I created, which is add transient. This is how the controller will know how to resolve these dependencies. So I post service, excuse me, and this resolves to I post service like this. So this is a dependency exception, dependency container. That guy basically says, okay, when you run into these, you're gonna have to basically ensure that these dependencies are in place. Okay, perfect. So I'm gonna go ahead and create a config task, which is register logging broker and post service. Okay, that configuration is done. Now let's go ahead and create a controller. Because we have brokers, services, models, and controls, and this design one is actually where we add all the little designs of how things are looking like and all that. This is just the design for everybody. And I actually think that this design guy should go all the way up in the solution level, but I guess I can't do that right now. So we'll do that later. Okay, let's go ahead in here and create a new folder, and that new folder is going to be called controllers. So there's add folder, controllers. Oh, it looks like we already have one in here, do we? Yeah, because we already have the home controller, right? So let's add one in here and let's call it post controller. So this is a new controller here. I can just go and add controller. And I want the template of an API controller. So API controller empty. And I'm just gonna call it a posts controller. Posts controller.cs. And then Evan, you're gonna be the one testing it. So I'm gonna be building the controller and you're gonna be testing it, by just adding just manual values in the database, and we're gonna try to retrieve it. What do you think about that plan? Does that sound like a plan? We're gonna replace controller base with something called RESTful controller, which is an open source library that I built with a couple of other really intelligent engineers, Alice Liu and Shemiwitz Handler, to kind of handle a bunch of events that happen. But let's just start with the dependencies in here. Private read-only I post service. This is my post service in here. So this is post service. And then I need a constructor that takes in that post service, which is my dependency, and assigns it to a post service that is being passed in from the dependency injection IOC container. Okay, now let's go ahead and do HTTP GET, and this is public action result, right? And this is iQueryable of post. So that's what I'm expecting to return from the system, like this. And I'm gonna go ahead in here and say get all posts. It's not asynchronous because it's talking to the database directly. So that's that. And let's do a try catch in here real quick, and let's handle a bunch of things, right? So first of all, I want to go ahead in here and say this dot service iQueryable, right? And this is post, right? And this is retrieved. I don't know where they're coming from, so I can't call them storage anymore. Retrieved posts. So this dot service dot, here we go, service, post service dot retrieve all posts. So the first one, I'm gonna go and return OK, and this OK response would be the retrieved post, right, Evan? Is that the deal? That's one part. And then there are two exceptions that I need to handle, and both of them have the same response because there's no input really, right? The first one is post dependency exception. Of course, with a more advanced kind of CRUD operations like create and modify and delete, you get things like bad requests because the input was invalid and all that. But not in this case. It's just a very simple example to show the world how we do pair programming and pure pairing and all that. Post service exception. It's post service exception. And both of them will be handled almost exactly the same. So both of them will be returning a problem, and that problem will be the post dependency exception in here dot message. So this is what we communicate to people. And in this case here, we do something almost exactly the same, which is return problem. That's an HTTP 500 error, basically, that we communicate. And this is post service exception dot message. All right, we have a controller endpoint. You hit slash API slash posts. Things should work like a charm, unless I'm forgetting anything on the logging broker or the storage broker instantiation. So everything should be fine. Now, Evan, I'm gonna hand this over to you so you can, run Postman and see if we can. So this is controllers, get all posts. All right, there you go, my friend. You're it. Your turn.
Okay. So I need to pull the branch.
That's right.
Oops. Is this one? Okay. Now I need to get the URL, I guess, or the
That's right. If you run the application, it will pop up like a browser, that will give you an in on that URL directly. That's how I usually do it myself. Let's give it a second there. Do you have the branch down? I think you're still on master.
Oh, oops.
Yeah. You tired? End of the day? That's it? Calling it? Okay.
Still in there.
Okay.
Out to the new branch. There we go.
All right. Did it pop up like a Chrome or yeah, let's run it first.
Okay.
So technically if we go and say /API/posts, it should give us back the and your Swagger probably is going to give you that kind of capability. Wait on that one. Your Swagger generation will probably give you that endpoint out of the box with some pretty colors and pretty documentation. More contractual than anything else. But let's just make sure that, because I have a little doubt that this add logging might not be doing the right instantiation of iLogger. So let's just see if that's the case. I do it normally differently in these cases, and if that's the case, it'll be just a very quick change, something that we can do in like a second. Here we go. All right. Perfect. Now, wow, it looks funny. Okay, let's just instead of /swagger/index, just do /API/posts. Why does it look so weird? Something is up on this machine. Yep, posts, yep, and hit that guy. It should either throw an exception and say, hey, there's some services that I was not able to instantiate, or it'll just give us an empty array, an empty, beautiful JSON array. Give it a second there. There you go. So we have it. Now, why don't you go ahead in the database and just manually enter a record in the database? Just manually enter a record in your if you click on view and then SQL, and then let's go to SQL Server Object Explorer, and because we don't have a post endpoint yet, so we're gonna have to enter that data manually. And let's just go ahead and enter a couple of records in there. Here we go. Yep, Tarafu Core DB. That's your guy. And then let's see if we have the post table there where we can actually add the record. Just expand the tables. I think that would be good. Evan's machine is powered by wind. All right. All right.
It's getting, while at it,
You gotta do it from Postman so we can have a better screenshot. Yep.
and I guess I can see if this
Yeah,
works for
yeah. Yeah, of course. And I think you have the SSL also taking care of configure. Yeah, there you go. So this is giving you a pretty empty JSON. Let's just see if we can add a record right here real quick in the database.
There we go.
Yep, there you go. Right click and let's add some data in there. I think it's data. So view data. And then inside that, you can just enter, a bunch of records. So have a couple of GUIDs handy, a post handy, just some random content handy, and then you can enter that record and we should be a go. Hopefully if you download and install the version, the preview version of Visual Studio 2022, it would kind of give you a little bit of a better insight. Or I can do it quicker from my side if that's okay with you.
Yeah,
Let me,
that's a
let me, yeah, let me take it from here. Let's go down here and let's go into the SQL Server. And here's my post. I'm just gonna view the data real quick. Here's my data. I need a GUID. Visual Studio could give you that outside of the box. Let's create a GUID in here. Creating a GUID is broken in the new Visual Studio. Okay, let's go outside and get random GUID from Google. Free online GUID generator. There you go. I'm gonna move that guy to the side. There we go. This is my GUID generator here, and then here's a GUID, and I'm gonna slap that guy in there, and probably because we don't have any integration with the author yet, doesn't matter, and I'm gonna say Evan is awesome. Create date 1/1/1990. Doesn't matter, any date really, right? And here we go. So now if I run this guy, I should be able to have a nice screenshot in my Swagger, in my Postman here that shows that I can, let me share my screen here real quick for Postman. There you go. And then here's the URL where I can retrieve these things. And then I can go down here and say /API/posts and say get, and I should get that beautiful post that I just had. And boom, we have a screenshot. I think we can create a PR now, Evan, right? So this is a PR. Here we go. Let's go back to GitHub. Here we go. And GitHub. And this is Tara for core, create and compare. Here's controllers, right? Get all posts, right? And here's a screenshot, and that's how we created a PR. The PR usually has a screenshot, so just show the people that, hey, I built this end to end, because you don't always have your acceptance tests ready. Like sometimes you don't have the delete ready, or you don't have this or that ready. So you have that kind of activity in here ready. Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and merge this PR because I know it works. I just ran it. So that's this guy. And yeah, that completes it. So if you look at the commit history in here, we already have 43 commits. You can see the entire story since Evan and I started from about 2 hours ago. We created the brokers, the services, the controllers, and all the way down to an API endpoint that's actually functional. So now we can actually go in here and say, yep, we created a controller and we tested that controller. So we kind of lit up the entire functionality. And that's how you build systematic experience. That's how you build, great relationships with engineers. Pair programming is very, very important. You bring a senior person on the team and a person who's just about to start. The one thing I intentionally uh, didn't want to mention at the beginning, just so you guys see how effective and intelligent and really receptive to learning Evan is that Evan just learned about the engineering standard, and building ASP.NET Core and C Sharp and the Entity Framework and SQL Server and Swagger and Postman, all of these things. He just learned about all of these things in about 2 weeks ago, right, Evan? Was it just 2 weeks ago?
2 3 weeks.
2 or 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks. 3 weeks, C Sharp, engineering standard, APIs, RESTful, sense, exceptions, mock, unit testing, all of it in one shot because it's all part of one cohesive, coherent experience. You're learning about all these patterns. Like while he's actually building, writing things in dependency, exception, separation of concerns, single responsibility, everything. He's doing all solid principles, just naturally as he's building and learning about the engineering standard, and all of these things. So, Evan, what do you have to share, from that experience and from your learning experience with the world? People that want to learn something new, or people that are in the mid of their careers, but they don't necessarily know about these patterns. What do you have to say for them?
Um, you can learn it, I guess. No matter where you're at, I guess, whether you're just a beginner or whether you're already experienced in computer programming, but you want to learn these different methods, different standards that might benefit you in the future, then go for it because it's definitely possible and it'll definitely help you.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so very much for being so patient with me. And I look forward to building more software with you, sir, to build something that actually changes the world. So we're changing the world. We're building a social media platform that is decentralized, respects human, dignity and privacy. But on top of all that, we're learning in the process, and we're building true, solid industrial engineering skills that we can take out there and build whatever we want with it. Thank you so much, Evan. Have a wonderful day. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for watching. And like always, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you in another video. Thank you, Evan. Bye.
Right. Mhm.